Hi, my name is Seneca. Welcome to my channel. This is where I talk anything casual or monumental in relation to life and life's events. Today, I just wanted to kind of sit and casually talk about the best books that I read in 2023. Although I am not a booktuber, I'm just somebody who talks about whatever they find interesting. I was taken on such beautiful and different journeys with each and every one of these. It's fun in taking a book and being a part of that story, but to share that story with somebody else who potentially could or could not share your viewpoint is also very exciting. It's like kind of on the same level of reading the book. I'd say that this year is the year that I got back into reading. I only graduated in 2022, and up until graduation, I feel like I didn't really have a lot of time to read anything other than books that were assigned through reading. I never really pushed myself to read a decent amount of books like I have this year. This year I read around 30 books, which is really low for the average booktuber. It's like nothing. But for like the average person, I'd say that I'm proud of myself, okay? Things like Goodreads and just knowing that other people read a lot of books puts a little bit of pressure on you as a reader to feel like you need to be impressive with your reading, and just puts the pressure on you that just like does not need to exist unless you would like to personally fulfill a goal of reading a certain amount or like of doing as much as you can because you feel like fulfilled by that. Here are the list of the books that I read in 2023 that I'm going to be reviewing. Demon Copperhead, the best book I've ever read in my whole entire life. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, Feeding the Soul by Tabitha Brown, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin, what is his last name? I'll insert his last name if I can remember. Stevenson. And then Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. Here's what I look for in a book. I look for something that's really introspective. I just need a reflective person in order for me to feel like this is truly a fulfilling work of art. I need a good cry. I love a good cry. I feel like the stories that make you feel the most, multiple arrays of emotion, are just always the best to me, that speak to me the loudest. And then also a potentially thrilling book, which is why I like thrillers, with social commentary. And the social commentary can be implicit or explicit. I feel like there was a lot of social commentary in Hello Beautiful that was implicit, but versus Yellowface by R.F. Kuang was extremely explicit. I'm gonna give my rating scale because I was talking with my friend. I was like, all these books that I'm reading recently in my book club, which by the way, I'm in a book club that happens once a month that's based on like mystery and thriller books, which is one of the books on my list is from that book, from the book club, which I rated kind of low, but I'm kind of rating a little bit higher now that I think about the story, and I would reread it. If I rate a book a 1, I regret giving the book my time of day. And then I also like to relate it to like in relation to eating, because I feel like we all rate food really highly and all have very strong opinions about food. One is if I had a bad meal that made me ill. It's like, that should not have happened. I never want that to happen again. Oh my gosh, I did it, but I didn't want to. 2s are the bare minimum. I was entertained, but I was also looking for much more. In relation to food, it's like a bland meal with no seasoning. 3s are entertaining with moments that you have enjoyment, and in relation to food, it's kind of like just baseline fast food. It's like we all enjoy fast food. Like I have a bunch of 3s that I've read that I've been like, oh, that was good. Like I found some value in it. I found some great moments in it, but it wasn't, I found some good moments, but it wasn't great. I'm looking for a little bit more to make it great. And then 4s, I would relate to dining out with a close friend or my husband and just having a beautiful time. Here's a great story, here's a great experience, and here's something that made me think. A 5 is my favorite meal has been cooked by a personal chef in the most cozy setting that I could think of. That to me is what a 5 is. And 5s are so rare. I feel like 5s should be given like a very rare, like I do not give out 5s. I have one book that I read that was a 5, which is Demon Copperhead. Here we go. Demon Copperhead. This is a tragic story that starts off with a boy and his mom. The boy has grown up in really unfavorable circumstances in the Appalachian Mountains. Demon Copperhead is kind of his nickname that is formed into his permanent name. His real name is Damien. As described in the book, everybody, at least where he's from, goes by a specific name that you just kind of know them by. Barbara Kingsolver wrote this book specifically to demystify certain stereotypes that are about people living in the Southern Appalachian Mountains. The story is set in, I guess, what they would call ground zero for people in the opioid epidemic. It's a beautifully tragic story about a boy's journey born in the most unfavorable conditions, who grows up with a mom who's struggling very heavy with a drug addiction, who describes what poverty has done to him, his family, his friends.
Also, I do just want to add, since I'm not really getting in depth to the beautiful parts, I'm kind of just saying, oh, it's a tragic story about drugs and poverty. It's also one of the funniest books I've ever read in my life. I would catch myself out loud just being like, I can't believe that was just said in the middle of, deaths and people struggling really hard. It's incredibly funny, written from the perspective of a young boy who grows into being a young man, and he has an amazing sense of humor through everything he goes through. He has such a sense of, you kind of feel like you're being taken on an adventure, even though it is hard to get through if you do not like sadder stories. It will keep you laughing. It will keep you really entertained. And also, I do just want to say, as an adoptee, it sheds light on some themes in adoption, like interfamily adoption, as well as the foster care system, that are very true and very real. And it comes from a place of, you can see how people would end up in those scenarios. Even though it's a book, it does speak a lot to real life and the humor that we get from tragedy as well.
They say that it's a modern retelling of David Copperfield. Don't even remember David Copperfield. This, in relation to David Copperfield, if this is anything like David Copperfield, I will go back and read it and hopefully fall in love in the way that I fell in love with Demon. I think about Demon all the time. I tried to make my husband read or listen to this on audiobook because I'm so obsessed with this story. It was so beautifully written. It was just, I have no criticism to the author, to anything that goes on in the story. It was a little bit long for me, but it was all very necessary to get to know this person on the deepest level and get to know his struggle, get to know the beauty within his world, get to really feel for him in the most intense way. God, I give Demon Copperhead a 5 out of 5. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. The Creative Act, essentially, Rick Rubin is a producer. Although he describes a creative, well, he doesn't necessarily describe only creativity in music. He kind of describes creative acts in relation to, if you're a creative, this is what creativity is. This is what how creativity could aid you. This is how creativity moves. This is the flow of creativity. Like, all the processes in relation to creativity is what is described in the Creative Act. This book just gave me, as a creative, this book gave me a lot of solace into my own creative processes and into what creativity is. And it just gave me a lot of inspiration to seek out more creative ideas and to really focus on projects that I've been wanting to look at. If you're a creative, or if you're an artist, if you're somebody who simply would like to get more into creative things, I recommend you start with the Creative Act. I'd give it a solid 4.5 out of 5. I was incredibly entertained, but I think that there was kind of this lack of I need to finish this book all the way through, that I did have with Demon Copperhead. Demon Copperhead, I was I need to inhale this, I need to learn everything about it, but the Creative Act is kind of it's not really self-helpy, it's more self-exploration, I don't know, I went on a journey and really felt motivated and inspired, but it's not necessarily self-help, it's a little bit more valuable than that. I don't know. Yellowface. R.F. Kuang knew what she was doing with this book. Okay, I have watched so many reviews of Yellowface, and even if they're good or bad, I'm still incredibly entertained because that's what a good piece of work does. It sparks conversation, it makes you think, it gives you a bunch of ideas. How do I give a good synopsis about this book? Follows two authors. One of them is an Asian American. Her name is Athena. One of them is just like a white American. Her name is Juniper. Juniper Song Hayward. And Juniper is a struggling author, whereas Athena is a lot more just successful, kind of out the gate, found success in her career very early on, versus Juniper Song is more of a, I guess you would say, more of the average story of what it means to be an author. I'm not even quite sure about if that's correct. It's just what I think. Through their very different backgrounds, it's just very clear that Juniper has this kind of frenemy dynamic with Athena that is very unspoken, but throughout the book you kind of realize their relationship is kind of built off of this envy and this obsession and this just want to be recognized for, I don't know, like who they are as authors, but one of them has just hit the mark and then one of them just hasn't. So the book goes into how Juniper deals with that envy, so far as to when Athena ends up dying. That's not really it happens like in the first chapter. So like, and I'm pretty sure you've heard of this book. Athena ends up dying. Juniper ends up taking one of her unfinished manuscripts, and since Athena's never told anybody about the unfinished manuscripts, takes the story as her own, and then kind of we see how that story has gone throughout the whole entire book. And one of the big questions is who's able to write what stories, because Athena is an Asian American versus Juniper is just a white American taking an Asian American story that is about Chinese laborers. But the thing is, throughout the book, all the things that are dissected is plagiarism necessarily racism, if it's simply just plagiarism, or is plagiarism. And then as well as it's kind of dissecting, like, Athena wasn't perfect herself. Athena also had a lot of problems. Athena herself in this story was a token herself. Juniper is a problematic, horrid person who has a racist ideals. This is not a good person. There were so many things that were said in the book that I was like, I just feel like I read a lot of this dialogue and was like, I have heard these specific conversations and these specific comments made from a non-POC to a POC, and it just feels too real. Like, it just felt so real reading it. It made me so mad, but then I had to remember, this is somebody speaking from their experience about things that they've heard and things that they know. This is not like a person who's just typing in racist ideals to like get you heated. This is like somebody putting this into this character because this is what this character, I guess, requires. I will say, I'm giving this book a solid 4.5. I can't give it the 5 because it just felt like a little bit like too long. It just felt maybe 60 pages too long. I was gonna say 100. That's really a lot. 60 pages too long. 4.5 is accurate because it just felt like a great, I would love to sit and talk about this at a place where I can just dine with a close friend or my husband and to talk through all of the social commentary it provided, and to talk through kind of the idea of everyone that's problematic. Everyone in this book is problematic to some degree. Who are we gonna let tell whose story? But personally, even though the question was asked in the book, who gets to tell whose story? Because there was a criticism made that Athena can't even really tell stories of people who have either immigrated into America or like of Chinese laborers, because she is somebody who was incredibly privileged, because she's incredibly privileged, even though she is Chinese American. Like, why should she get to tell that story just based off of kind of like having a baseline of the story she's telling? Because she's benefiting off of people who have like really genuinely suffered and they're selling their stories of suffering for profit to benefit her, even though she has no experience in that. I will say Juniper should okay, Juniper should not have stolen that story at all. She had no reason to tell it. It is plagiarism in the book. That plagiarism was racism, in my opinion, because she didn't even have the baseline respect for the people she was telling the stories of. She would make really racist comments. At the very end, even when she was fighting, what is her name? Who was she fighting? She was fighting somebody and she was like, oh, and I knew I could pin her to the ground, or I knew she would fall because Asian women are all so small. They're all so small. It's like you don't even have the respect for the people that you're stealing a story off of that it's about. Like, and there was a moment in Yellowface where she mentioned that Athena had stolen her own story, Juniper's story, of when Juniper got essayed, which I felt a lot more empathetic to Juniper in that moment, because it does make you realize, like, you want to hate Juniper so much because she's such a bad person. And this is the first story where I've read, I think, somebody that was intentionally unlikable. But I feel like that fact that we saw Athena, or the fact that we had heard somebody telling a story of Athena essentially stealing story, we could call it inspiration, being inspired by her, but not really running it by her, as that is plagiarism that is horrible and wrong. Like, it doesn't make it better, the fact that you guys are friends. Like, it's, I'm stuttering so much. The book sparked so many ideas and so many great things that just needed to be said. I think also, since going through 2020, I could just feel some things that were coming out on the page from Juniper's perspective, that people who think like Juniper. And I feel like, since potentially R.F. Kuang also knows people like Juniper, and I'm projecting, okay? I am projecting. I have a feeling she wanted to channel that into a character and air her kind of grievances onto somebody that is problematic who actually says these things, because she knows people that say those things, or she knows experiences that have happened with somebody like Juniper. I thought it was brilliant, beautiful, 4.5. My God. Okay, so then we have Feeding the Soul by Miss Tabitha Brown. Oh my God. Feeding the Soul is just such a beautiful story of Tabitha Brown and kind of her, I don't want to say coming of age, because she's came of age. Her kind of coming to success. Tabitha Brown, if you don't know, I feel bad reducing her title into being just an influencer, because she has a TV show, she's an author, is active on social media like every single day, but she just has so much more value than just simply, I'm an influencer. She's somebody who's like, I don't want to even say, she's just a truth speaker, okay? She's beautiful, she's a truth speaker, has the most beautiful, consoling voice that I think she puts in her bio that she's like America's mom and auntie. She is the new age Oprah. She is. Really enjoyed her book, Feeding the Soul. It was about her life. It was about the struggles that she's gone through in order to get where she is now. She's incredibly successful, but all of the stories that she's had along the way of growing to success, like getting over sickness, manifesting, talking about the failures and successes of what it's like to be in Hollywood, and how she was a trained actor for like decades before hitting it big by getting success off of her personality. So many gems. Oh my gosh. I read it on Libby. She just is the soothing auntie voice that you need whenever you're going through a hard time. If you're having a bad day, I want to listen to somebody like Tabitha Brown tell me everything's going to be okay. She basically, the whole entire message of Feeding the Soul is, I commit to things that feed my soul, because that's my business. My life is about feeding my soul, and she does stories about how you can kind of feed your soul and what has fed her soul, like added to her success. So beautiful. Give it a solid 4. I give it a solid 4. It's beautiful. I'll read it again. I loved it. It's inspirational. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone is a mystery. This is going to be a short review. Is a mystery about this man. What the heck is his name? I forgot. I read this like a couple months ago and I can't remember. His name is Ernest. Okay, Ernest and his family. Everyone in that family has killed somebody, and you kind of figure out why throughout the book. This man has a bad reputation in relation to his family and his family's reputation. Something goes wrong when they're at a family retreat, and his brother, who just gets out of jail, gets into like additional trouble. And you kind of throughout the story of realizing like why the brother's in trouble, why the family is like roped into trouble. You find out like why everybody has killed someone. You find out family history that has been unveiled that you didn't think was going to be in. And it's an incredibly funny, it's a incredibly funny mystery that I cried at the end because it involves themes of adoption, which as an adoptee, even though I didn't, like I don't take pride in the telling of this story of adoption that happened. I took pride in knowing that the author was socially aware enough to know where to fit adoption in the right place, and everyone has killed someone. Beautiful, loved it. Give it I'm gonna say a 3.8. I initially just gave it a 3. I'm gonna say 3.8. Hello Beautiful. Oh, Hello Beautiful is a coming of age story centered around primarily.
Just gonna be completely honest, I really fumbled the description of this book, even though I loved it so much more than I was able to describe. So I'm just gonna do it over here. This story is a literary fiction and historical fiction book that follows, I'd say, the main character being William, with 3 separate characters throughout the span of 3 generations that tell the story of love, loss, and generational trauma. The story has been described as a modern-day Little Women, and it even addresses that in the book, that the 3 separate characters, the 3 sisters, describe themselves kind of as the sisters from Little Women. We start off with William's perspective, so that's kind of who the story is centered on, even though the perspective does change to different people. William comes from a very neglectful household, overshadowed by depression and grief, which he carries into carries from childhood into adulthood, from his parents into his current family. By finding out about it. So it's not very apparent to him that he was neglected until he gets into a new family. William then meets Julia Padavano, who introduces him into the meaning of what it's like to have the meaning of love, and what it's like to have warmth in your family, and how to show care to people who care for you. Although the story is not of a linear love, and it has a lot of different twists and turns, as William and the Padavano family find out what it means to love and care for those you love. It's so incredibly, I'm going to say it again, beautiful. I've reused the word beautiful so many times, but it derives a lot of stories, or it derives a lot of themes from control, and what it means to have control, to take control of your future, to not know where your future is headed, to find out about what depression is, about what neglect and emotional abuse is, all through the lens of people who are coming of age. And it's an amazing story. I will give it a 4.5 because it's just great. I will say it went on a little too long. Actually, no, I'm just going to give it a 4. I'm just going to give it a 4 because I really was not liking the ending because it was just going on a little too long, and I was just like, can this book end? So I'm giving it a 4. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate anybody just giving their time to me and the things that I'd like to talk about. If you read one of these books, or if you're interested in one of these books, please let me know so we can gab about it someday. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you for watching again.